This video was going to be a long follow-up to my previous keyboard video, but after I recorded all of the clips of myself cleaning and fixing all of the keyboards, I kind of felt like I just want to make it into a very short video instead, and I'll explain the reason why at the end of this video. So to start off, I removed all of the keycaps from all of the 3 keyboards that I decided to clean, after which I rinsed all of the said keycaps and then put them into a bowl, into which I put some denture cleaning tablets, which were unfortunately extremely overpriced, and I let them soak for a couple of hours before wiping each of the keycaps with a towel, after which I let them sit overnight. During this period, I also cleaned the keyboards themselves, starting with the IQUNIX F96, followed by the HHKB, and then finally by my hand-wired board. They were all quite dirty, because while I actually wanted to clean them a long time ago already, I also wanted to do it on video, but unfortunately that video, aka this video, just got delayed for so long that it got pretty bad. All of these keyboards actually had something wrong with them as well, so after cleaning them, I wanted to fix them. I started with my hand-wired keyboard, where a few wires had probably come loose, so some of the keys weren't working, but I fixed this keyboard for the exact same reason dozens of times, so I knew it was fine as it was completely fixable. And sure enough, one of the wires was indeed pretty loose, so I fixed that and I improved the soldering of some of the other wires as well. And finally, I also changed out the switch of the spacebar from a Cherry MX Silent Grey to a regular spring swap Cherry MX Grey instead, which had some ancient modifications done to it as well, and it was one of the switches I received from the seller of the top plate, who also sent me some other switches such as a vintage Cherry MX Black, and I still have them in this board on various buttons on the side just for fun essentially. Next up, I wanted to fix the IQUNIX keyboard, where the S key that I had swapped out for a Gator and Black sometimes wasn't working unless I pressed it really hard, so it probably had some loose solder as well, which gave a bad connection. I actually thought of swapping out all the Gator and Blacks in this keyboard back to the original Cherry MX Blues, as I thought that I'll probably sell this keyboard, but then I realized that I only have 5 Cherry MX Blues on hand, and I also actually don't have a solder sucker here either, meaning that I just opened it up for pretty much no reason at all, as I couldn't do anything except for fixing the S key, which I could have done, but I just completely forgot about that and I put the keyboard back together. Finally, I wanted to fix the HHKB, which had this issue where the micro USB kept disconnecting, and it happened quite frequently, like up to 50 times a day. Most of the time, the disconnects were only for a split second, in which case it pretty much didn't matter, but other times it didn't reconnect for quite a few seconds or until I replugged the cable, so occasionally it did get pretty annoying. Luckily, I had fixed the same issue in the past by just bending these pins a bit, which hold the connector more in place so it wouldn't be as loose, and sure enough, it hasn't disconnected a single time after I did that. Most likely, the USB socket is just a bit worn out, as it is a 20-year-old keyboard after all. Anyway, on the next day, all the keycaps had completely dried, so I put them all back on, and yes, I was actually using my keyboard without any keycaps for the rest of the day before that, but to my disappointment, came out that my hand-wired keyboard still ended up being broken somehow, as despite testing it the previous night, one of the wires must have snapped off again, as one column of keys once again wasn't working, so I guess I have to open it up and fix it again, which is pretty annoying. Speaking of this keyboard though, it mostly has box royals, which are tactile bump switches that are extremely tactile to the extent that I suppose most people actually don't like them simply because they're literally too tactile. Personally, I actually do like them quite a lot, as they are probably as close as a Cherry MX based switch can get to Topra, but they're definitely not the best for things like gaming, which is why I had the WASD keys switched out for Gator and Blacks with lighter springs, and the W and E keys were also light linears, because those are the keys I used for playing Gosu back when I actually played that game over 5 years ago. But because the box royals are so extremely tactile, it's quite awkward to have the WASD keys be semi-light linears right next to them, because it leads to an extremely inconsistent typing experience, which might be one of the biggest issues with this keyboard right now. So earlier when I opened up the keyboard, I wanted to change those linears to box royals as well, but for the moment I decided not to, because I'm still not entirely sure what I'm going to do with this keyboard. One option is just to keep it as it is and occasionally use it for something like gaming, for when I need dedicated arrow keys or would benefit from a linear WASD cluster, and still have the rest of the switches be box royals, because they're still really fun switches overall. The other option is just to go ahead and swap out the WASD cluster for box royals as well, which would possibly lead to a typing experience that would in some ways rival the HHKB, because I definitely like the box royals as well, but then again, if I already have two keyboards, it would be nice if at least one of them would have some kind of an extra benefit as well, such as gaming, for which the box royals aren't that great for. And the final option is just to buy some new switches, for example box jades, which are a clicky switch, as I actually do like clicky switches as well, but ironically I've noticed that box royals literally feel clicky as well. And I just went ahead and googled it, and comes out it's an extremely common characteristic of the switches because of the tactile bump being so sharp. So most likely there is no point in me trying to find any new tactile switches, as I really doubt that I'll find anything that I'll like more than the box royals anyway, especially considering that I really don't like switches such as the Akko royals, or just any kind of switch that's similar to something like Cherry MX Clears. So that leaves me with linears, but since I don't like heavy linears, nor linears with a typical steep force curve, the only option I have left are some really lightweight, extremely smooth linears with very long springs, which is something I have not yet tried, and there is a chance that I'll like them, but I'll never know unless I try typing on a full board of them. In the previous video, I mentioned potentially getting something like the tangerines and then spring swapping them, but that will be just way too expensive as well as tedious, especially when I'm uncertain whether or not I'll even like them more than the box royals. And honestly, when I was cleaning and fixing the keyboards, I really felt like I just don't have the same passion for this as I used to. It felt bothersome to the extent that I didn't really feel any excitement when I thought about doing further modifications such as changing out the switches. Originally, I was going to make this video into a live commentary where I would have been commenting and sharing my thoughts on every step of the entire process, but comes out that for myself, that's so much more difficult to do than I expected, and combined with the lack of excitement I had, it just ended up being a disaster to the extent that I kinda just felt like it's better if I don't make this video at all, but in the end I decided that I'll make it into the video that it is now. Regardless though, I still found it a bit sad that this whole ordeal will have such a bleak, negative conclusion, especially considering that my poor handmade keyboard is truly going to be abandoned at this rate. But suddenly, I found these switches called Akko Vintage Whites, which perfectly fit the profile I described, and even though I still don't feel much excitement towards them, they're only $9.99 for 45 pieces, which is basically the same price that I paid for the cleaning tablets, so essentially I decided that I might as well buy them to find out once and for all whether or not I'll like these kinds of linears. It might actually be the last keyboard related purchase I'll ever make, because once they arrive and comes out that I really do like them, then I won't need to buy anything else, and if comes out that I don't like them, then I feel like there just isn't anything else out there that I'd be interested in anymore. In which case, I'll probably just change the switches back to box royals if I even have the motivation to do that anymore. But anyway, I really do think that it's a good thing, because as long as I treat these two keyboards well and I'm happy with them, it just means that I've found my true endgame which I can enjoy forever. And a lot of people misunderstood this from my previous video, but I'm not looking for a new keyboard. I've also never really wanted a keyboard collection or anything like that either, as I've always just been looking for that one keyboard that I really enjoy, and that keyboard is the HHKB. But of course, my hand-wired keyboard is also really important to me, as it truly is something I made by myself through so much effort, and I just wanted to find an excuse to appreciate it and use it again. And that was the whole point. In reality, I didn't even want to buy anything new at all, but I think trying out those new switches will, at least for myself, be a nice final conclusion to this long journey I've had with this keyboard. And while I started off this video feeling quite negative, when I was playing around with this keyboard through recording the background footage, I kinda started once again welling up some feelings of appreciation towards it, because it truly is a pretty fun keyboard as well. So, while right now this keyboard is actually still broken so I can't use it, the next time when the switches arrive, I'll make sure to give my best at fixing it, whilst also installing the new switches regardless of whether or not I'll decide to keep them.